Welcome to another edition of the Insider Recruiting Scoop. I'm Jarret Johnson. I'm joined by the mighty Joe Yeager. Mighty Joe, this edition we're talking football. And look, there's some things I want to talk about. I think people have some understandable questions because we all know that sports has pretty much been postponed or canceled for the time being, just period, around the world almost. And that is certainly the case for NCAA sports and Texas Tech. But what about recruiting? What's going on with recruiting? Well, here's the deal. The NCAA announced through or until April 15th, both on and off-site recruiting has been canceled. So what that means is you can't go to a recruit's house, you can't go to their school, you can't have a recruit on campus, all right? So, and that's for the entire country. Now, what is still allowed, and I confirm Tech is still actively doing this, pretty much like they have been, is electronic recruiting. So, FaceTime, Twitter direct message, the old school phone calls, which they still do, believe it or not, with parents more than anything, text messages, all of that is still permitted. So I wouldn't say like they've ramped it up because they were already doing that at a high level. I mean, this staff has shown there are some go-getters, and certainly in electronic recruiting, electronic messages. So what does that mean though? Where does Tech stand though? Everybody's kind of leveled the playing field with everybody not being able to see people in person. So how did Tech do leading up to all this being stopped? Well, actually, the Red Raiders were ahead of the curve. Talked to some sources. They actually feel pretty good that the fact that they had two monster junior recruiting weekends this cycle already. Once in January, which coincided with the basketball team playing Kentucky, and then just a couple of weekends ago when Tech finished the regular season against Kansas, the basketball team. So they had monster. I mean, the first one was a junior weekend, and I thought that was huge. But the one 2 weeks ago, Joe, we confirmed 40 guys, all right? Yeah. And these weren't guys, just bodies. Now, I'm sure they had some guys that are unrated still and all that. But as I asked Coach Wells about it, not specifically which players, Joe, but the caliber of players. And as he put it, they had their first round draft picks on campus already, and I've actually talked to some other sources, and basically almost all of their top junior prospects they've already had on campus at least once, many of them several times, even more than just those two visits. So they're really ahead of the curve. Some of those guys we've mentioned before, but Jacoby Jackson, an offensive lineman out of Mansfield, Jack Tucker out of Argyle, you go to the other side of the ball, I mean, really, they're doing better than I can remember. Watson, the four-star defensive end, Colin Oliver, the linebacker out of he's the number 4 overall player in Oklahoma, which they're producing a lot more talent than they used to now. 6'2", 220 linebacker, offered by everybody. I mean, Jordan Mukes, 6'4" safety who could run. They've had a lot of really highly rated guys, and guys who have more offers than they're rated, than how high they're rated. You know what I mean? Like, these are guys that are going to make jumps in the recruiting rankings, in my belief, based on their offers. But how does that sound to you? And what do you think about some of the guys that have been on campus? Do you think that's wishful thinking, or you think there's some credibility to that statement?
Well, you sold me. Yeah, that was pretty enthusiastic, Jarret. And
I want to be honest. I want to say my first thought was, man, they had some momentum going. This really stops it. But then I talked to some people in the know in terms of Texas Tech's program, and they said, no, we actually feel pretty good because we did get them on campus. There's a lot of people wishing they had already got people on campus instead of waiting for this or that or the other. We actually already did it.
Right, and it just kind of goes to show how important it is to have like a symbiosis between basketball and football.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you don't have Tech's basketball program, you don't have big-time games like Kentucky and Kansas, are you in this situation? Mm-hmm. I mean, how many people show up? Nobody wants to go see, the number 98 Red Raiders get waxed by Kentucky and Kansas. But when you got a big-time program coming off a national championship game, that changes the dynamics altogether. Mm-hmm. So you see how these two programs at Tech and every place else can really help each other or hinder each other if they're not producing.
Right.
So that's a really good thing for Tech, and sure, absolutely. You'd much rather have these visits in the fold. You've already accomplished something with these people, as opposed to still having to hope you can accomplish it later on. And you're not going to get any environments like the USOA and those two games on down the road. The opportunities just aren't there. Right. So you had the opportunities and you took advantage of them.
Absolutely. There are a couple guys that you had, scheduled to come in later this spring that you're going to have to be creative and you have to reschedule that. You want to talk about a couple of those guys, Joe?
Yeah, the defensive end transfer out of Youngstown State, Justice Reed.
Yes.
He's a really solid prospect.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a guy who 12 and a half sacks, I believe, and 21 tackles for loss this past season. And just really, he's about 6'3", 270.
Yeah.
Strong, pretty physical defensive end. Uses his hands very, very well. Knows how to keep people off of him, and has just got just enough burst and some craftiness that he can really, really be an effective pass rusher and a disruptive guy in the backfield. So yeah, he would be a major get. And then Monty Dawson, an all-purpose back.
Yes.
Little guy, about 5'8", 165, 170, something like that.
Little jitterbug.
Yeah, he is. But I tell you, man, that's a rock and roller right there. You watch he's fun to watch. When he gets in the open field, and he gets in the open field quite a bit, he runs a lot like Justin Stockton.
Oh, okay.
He just looks like him, and he wears the same number 4.
Okay.
But the thing is, he's also very physical for his size. He sheds tacklers very, very well. And I see a little bit of DeAndre Washington in that regard.
Whoa, now you're getting me really excited.
So I know, that's hitting you where you live.
Yeah.
So if you get a little bit of Stockton speed and DeAndre's ability to shake people off like that, then you got a guy who's going to be a lot better than people think he is. I mean, that size, some programs just won't even look at you.
Right.
If you're not, if you don't get the specs.
Yeah.
But we've seen what Tech has done with people like, Jakeem Grant.
Yep.
And if you want to go on further back with the old boys, Tyrone Thurman.
Yeah.
So these little guys have their place, and I think this guy is going to be a really good player for somebody, hopefully Tech.
Yeah, and both those guys still expect to visit Texas Tech. I mean, there's so much up in the air right now, but Justice and Monte have both said publicly they still plan on going to Tech or visiting Tech. It's just how is this all going to play out? And I think another thing to watch, and I think this is going to be the big date for all you recruit heads, kind of like me out there, to kind of tell if this is going to be more of a normal cycle or if this cycle is going to be totally blown up, is that April 15th deadline, because that is when the evaluation period is supposed to start up too. And that's when the coaches go and they see these players in person. Imagine it's kind of like a mini combine in every school where you go see these guys play in their spring ball practices or run track. You talk to their coaches, you talk to, everybody, their teachers, you look at their transcripts, all of that. It's a huge, huge part of the recruiting cycle. If that is pushed back to summer, it's going to totally change the way this recruiting cycle is. It's hard to comprehend how far you go down the rabbit hole, because these coaches are going to have to be doing those evaluation periods during the summer. And what does that look like? Are the kids in school during when it would be a summer break or not? I mean, everything just gets so complicated at that point. So that April 15th date is so critical for us to get an idea of what the rest of the cycle looks like. So it'll be interesting to see. And obviously, as of filming this, we have no idea how that's going to play out. So, but Monty Joe, really appreciate your insight. Great stuff from you as always. Thank y'all for watching, and until next time.